My fellow Guardians, what's up guys? Your dude Sly here, and welcome back to another Slynation Destiny 2 raid guide. Kingsfall is one of the best raids in Destiny, not only a fan favorite, but one of the longest raids Bungie has produced, in line with Forsaken's Last Wish. Now this will be part 1 of my Kingsfall raid guide, so keep a lookout for the rest of them, along with my secret chest guides that I will have here on my channel as well. So with that out of the way, y'all, let's talk about the Day 1 contest mode wall, the War Priest, or as he was called by someone I know, the Pain Priest. Now, I knew going in, he would ultimately be the DPS checkpoint, also known as the wall, for the reprised raid, but I did not expect to have such little room for error in doing damage. The way that you do damage hasn't really changed from Destiny 1, but how you extend that damage timer definitely has. So in this video, let's break down the best subclasses to use, which weapons work best, how to set up your characters, and finally we'll walk through all the mechanics in play and how you can best deal with them. Now, as a disclaimer, this guide is of my own making and is going live the day after Kingsfall dropped. This guide is meant for those who need or want a guide, not as some kind of elitist strategy perfecting every little detail that goes on. In a few months' time, or perhaps a year, when this video is old enough, things might and probably will have changed. So just be aware that this guide was created on the very first day the raid went live and is no means or no ultimate or best strategy to beat the War Priest, just one of many. Alright, with the disclaimer out of the way, enough small talk, let's get to it. Starting with subclasses and characters. Now, unlike Day 1 contest mode, normal mode has so much more forgiveness built in, but I would still recommend at least running 2 warlocks using solar wells with lunafactions. Now, depending on your loadouts, avoid Titan running a bubble would also be great for backup. Now for the rest, Night Stalker Hunter with Tether would be a good option for damage if you don't have anyone running Divinity. The only necessity really here for this fight are going to be 2 Warlocks running Wells with Luna, one at a very minimum. Now you don't have to use Warlock Wells for damage, but it's going to make things a hell of a lot harder as you take damage the entire time you're dishing it out. So having at least 1 well is pretty important simply to stay alive. The rest is up to you and your team and how everyone runs their loadouts. Now moving on to armor, weapons, and mods, I would go simply for your favorite primary, whatever you're comfortable using. Mine was a hand cannon and a solar shotgun. However, a solar scout rifle would also do well in its place. You could also use Vex Mythoclast as your solar weapon and have a sniper or shotgun as backup. I've also seen Arbalest being used quite a bit as a primary along with an SMG in the second slot. Now for your primary damage weapon, your heavy, legendary linear fusions with firing line, triple tap, 4th times a charm, or rapid hit are going to be your best bet for damage. However, any linear fusion with frenzy or vorpal, that will be your next best option, all running boss spec mod of course. If you do not have a linear fusion with those damage perks, then sleeper will be the next best thing to use. Moving on down the list, you could also run Izanagi's or Gjallarhorn. It will get the job done on normal mode, but you're going to be cutting it pretty close on master. At least I believe so. Time will tell once master level is released. Now if you're fairly new to the game and do not have a lot of weapons, hopefully you'll at least have Whisper of the Worm. It's not the best option, but it will still work fairly well on normal mode and get the job done. As far as mods go, in my opinion, anytime you're doing a raid, you're going to always want to be running High Energy Fire as an armor mod, along with the mod that gives you stacks of light from picking up orbs of light. Of course, another good mod along with that will be extra things like stacks on stacks. This way, when you're doing damage, your team will drop a Titan Bubble or Warlock Well, which drops orbs. Once everyone collapses for damage, this will allow you to charge your light by picking up your orb immediately before doing boss damage. And this will charge your light quickly and allow you to do a lot more damage since you aren't killing the boss quickly. Your High Energy Fire perk will stay active for the entire DPS phase, that is, until you kill an enemy. It's a mod that's easy to use and will stay active for the entire time. Another good mod to use is the seasonal mod Sundering Glare that will weaken enemies while hitting them from a distance. So linear fusions as your first choice, especially firing line, frenzy, or vorpal, along with rapid hit, 4 times a charm, or triple tap. Heck, even field prep would work as it gives you a larger magazine. Sleeper will then be your next best choice. After that, you're going to have to use Gjallarhorn, or Izanagi's Whisper of the Worm will do also. Finally, have one teammate run Divinity. War Priest dances around like a drunk dude in Footloose. Now Divinity not only increases your damage per hit, but gives you a much larger target to hit that causes critical damage. It creates this giant bubble around him, and as long as you hit that blue bubble, it will be the same thing as shooting his head. Now, it's not a must-have, especially if you're running well in a Titan bubble or a well in Tether, but it helps out tremendously no matter what your team decides to run, because he's going to be easier to damage. I highly recommend it for this boss fight. Finally, along with Lunafaction boots for Warlock, I would recommend having one teammate who is not a plate holder use Aeon's exotic arms. Now, out of the 3 choices you can choose on Aeon's, one of them lets you finish elites and it drops heavy for your entire team except for the wearer. Heavy ammo drops are critical and hard to come by in the War Priest. Aeons will give your team the ammo they need to get the job done. We'll talk about where to use them next. Alright, so with all that out of the way, next up, let's talk about the map, the various jobs and positions, and then we'll put all of this stuff into motion and talk about the mechanics of each step. So from the entrance and the rally flag, looking at the War Priest, we have 3 plates, top left, we have middle, and then right. There will also be tall columns in front of each plate with a sculpture of Oryx on the back sides of them. Now these sculptures will glow later on, and that glow depicts which plate needs to be engaged or stepped on. Adds will spawn from 4 monster closets on the ground level and on the top left and top right rooms. Now the first half of the fight, you're going to encounter regular hive enemies along with 2 witches, which are elites, and a few knights. 4 witches will spawn in total, 2 left, 2 right. These are the witches you're going to need to use your solar weapons on. Pop their shields, get them low, and allow the person using Aeons to finish them, dropping heavy ammo for your entire team. Once the majority of the ads are taken care of, you're going to hear that kind of hive war cry scream. Then 3 knights will spawn, 1 at each plate, left, center, and right. They now have the ability to use that hive sword super, which blasts out arc damage in a wave in front of it, the thing that you used to use over on Crota all the time. It hits pretty hard, so be aware of it. Now, once you kill all 3 knights, the plates will then engage and there's no turning back. So if you want your teammates to be able to run around the map and pick up heavy without having to rush things, you want to save one of the knights. So all you have to do is simply jump over him or lead him into a circle while everyone picks up heavy and gets ready for damage. Once the team is set, kill that last knight. You'll notice at the bottom left hand side of your screen that it is time to read the glyphs. Once you end up doing damage and get the boss to either half of its health or you lose 2 columns, the enemies will then change over from hive to taken. And instead of 2 witches, there's going to be 1 minotaur and 1 knight. Those will be the ones that you can finish for heavy ammo with Aeons after that. Alright y'all, so next up, let's talk about how to start the damage phase once you kill those 3 knights and you're ready to step on the plates. Now in Destiny 1, it was easy. Just see which was glowing and then step on them accordingly. But in Destiny 2, it is completely different. So to start the encounter, you will need to have 3 dedicated plate holders and 3 on ad control. Pretty much 2 players per plate with 1 doing plate duty. Middle plate will always start the encounter by hopping on it to activate it and then getting back off. Only the player standing on a plate can read the columns to figure out the order. So once middle steps on to activate things, he or she will then look left and right to see which column is glowing. That will tell you which plate to step on first. If none of them are glowing, then that means the center column is glowing and they just cannot see it. In that case, central plate would be the first plate to step on. Center plate holder will then have to step off the plate and then back on again, because remember, the center plate only steps on first to start things off and kind of activate it, and then to read the columns. No matter the order, they must always get back off the plate that very first time. Even if they are the number 1 plate, they have to step back on it again. So if, for example, they call out as the right plate first, the center plate will have to jump on to activate it, look to see which column is glowing on their left or their right. Then, once they see it, they have to back off of the middle plate and they will say right plate number 1. Right plate jumps on, then looks at the far left column to see if the front of it's glowing. If it is, that means left plate is second in line. If it is not glowing, then that means the center plate is second, since you cannot see the front of it. But in this instance, the left column is glowing, so left plate steps on, and then that only leaves the middle plate at the end. So middle will then step on, and then it is time for damage. Now you only have a short window to call out these plates, and you have to remember that the central plate always starts the encounter by jumping on it first to activate it. But that does not mean the central plate is number 1. They are only activating things and then looking to see who has the first plate, left, right, or center. So for example, if the right column is glowing and they call out right, then the right player jumps on, but everything turns red, that's because the central player is still on the plate, and that's not the correct order. The right plate is first, not center. So the center plate must look at the call out, memorize it, then completely jump off of the center plate before calling things. And they must be off that center plate before the next place or the first plate can be activated. Failure to get off of the plate will cause all the plates to go red and more than likely wipe your team, even if you were calling things out in the right order. So just be aware that it can cause confusion. Just think of the center plate as simply an activation switch. In order to activate things, you have to jump on and off again to activate it. After that, that's when you worry about the order. You call it out 1, 2, 3. Now, once the callouts have been made and the third plate holder jumps on, they will get a red aura or brand around them. This aura lets the team do damage for as long as they are underneath it. It has a timer of roughly, I think, 13 seconds or so. Once it hits 0, damage ends and the player dies unless it is passed off in time. Timing is everything here, so the entire time you're doing damage, you need to be counting down the timer. Counting down is critical, so you have to be pretty good at multitasking here. You have to be able to count down the timer while doing damage. It can be a little tricky, but nothing you won't get used to. Wherever the aura spawns, meaning the last plate hopped on or called, that is where the team will do damage. This will let at least 2 players start doing damage immediately and not have to run somewhere and waste 5 seconds getting everything set up. So if, for example, left plate is called last, that is where everyone will do damage. You do damage at whichever plate the aura appears. Now guys, here comes the tricky part. So you've already split up into 3 teams of 2 players at each plate. But during damage, 2 players who are not plate holders need to be on what I call the hunting team or the aura swap team. Instead of the D1 mechanic, the only way you can pass along the aura and keep the damage phase going is by stealing the brand. And you do that by finding a taken knight, killing it, and picking up a buff that will allow you to steal the aura, or brand as it's called in game. Passing the brand, gives you another 13 seconds, and you can pass it a total of 3 times. Now, I currently still haven't picked up on the spawn rotation for this taken knight, but it does spawn in 3 locations, 1 on the left, 1 center, and 1 right, and it spawns in that same location every single time. However, you only have roughly 12 seconds or so to find the knight, kill it, and then bring the buff back to the damage group, and then steal the brand to continue doing damage. Once you steal it, it's going to be your turn to do damage while counting down, and then the second person is going to have to steal it off of you. This is where those shotguns come in handy. Now the 2 who are in charge of killing the knight or in the hunting party, they continue the brand and they have to talk to each other during damage. Basically, once the last plate is called and then the aura appears, while everyone else is moving to do damage, the 2 on the brand team have to kind of stay in place and wait at their plates for a few seconds to see where the knight's going to spawn. Once it does spawn, call it out, and whoever is closest will be taking the first knight down. Now, if your partner is getting to it, go ahead, jump in, and do a little bit of boss damage. But if it's spawning close to you, then it's going to be your job to get the knight. You kill it, then get back to the group as soon as you can, as you rarely have time to spare. Now, if you're currently doing damage and you are the second person responsible for taking out the knight, you have to leave the damage area immediately once your partner is back and start hunting down that next spawning knight. For example, your partner gets the first knight and you are doing damage on the boss. Once the first knight is down and you hear that your partner is on the way to swap the brand, you're going to hear the countdown from the guy shooting who has the aura currently. It's best to leave when you hear about 5 seconds or so. Do not wait for the knight to appear and then go find it, as you will not have enough time to get there, kill it, and come back before time runs out. You will need to be in position or close by as it spawns in. Now, this is the hardest part of the mechanic, guys, but once you do it a few times and you figure out the timing, it then becomes easy. It just takes a little bit of repetition. You can only have the brand 3 times per damage phase. The first brand or aura comes from stepping on the final plate. The second brand is when you take the buff from the first knight and quote-unquote steal the brand from the first person, and then again it's taken a second time, a little over 35 seconds worth of total damage if you do it correctly. Now, once the brand has been handed off, the timer can then safely run down to 0 with no deaths. Simply keep shooting the War Priest until you see the words immune pop up. Once you do, hide behind the columns. Now, the War Priest will call this bright light that kills pretty much everything that light touches. And you'll notice a shadow behind the columns closest to the plate. You need to stay in this shadow column and only use 1 column at a time. That means you pretty much get to do 3 damage phases safely, with the 4th damage phase being kind of like the Enrage encounter, and you pretty much wipe at the end of that 4th damage phase if you do not kill him, since there's nowhere to hide. Once the column erodes away, that's the end of that damage phase, which means you break back up into your 3 teams of 2 players on each plate, and then the cycle again starts over. Now, if you are only doing damage and not the ones who have to hunt down the taken knight during damage, it's completely possible that you will run out of all your heavy in that very first damage phase. This is why Aeons are so valuable. Be sure to run heavy ammo finder for whatever weapon you decide to use, as it does come in handy. Now, as the columns start to erode, instead of the front side glowing, letting you know which plate you have to step on, you're going to see this giant flame thing hang over the spot where a column once stood, so it now makes it much easier to read the order. It takes practice, but once you start reading the plates a few times, you'll definitely get the hang of it. The hardest part of this fight is 1, having enough heavy ammo, and 2, hunting down the knights to pass off the damage aura. That's why it is critical of those whose job it is to hunt down the knights during damage, that they have to not worry about being the top on the damage list, because you must leave damage early in order to make it back on time. Once you make it back, it's best to take the brand when you hear 2 seconds, as sometimes networking or microphone lag will cause you to run out of time even if you grabbed it when you heard 1 second left. So just play it safe and quote unquote steal the brand when you hear 2 as the countdown. But yeah, that's about it, ladies and gents. That's the fight, and a team that has good weapons will take down the War Priest, usually on their 2nd damage phase. Now, this was hard to do during contest mode, as he had a ton of health, somewhere around 20 million, but on normal mode, it's going to be a walk in the park. Now, the best way to get good at raiding is to simply do. So get out there, find a team, and practice. But that's about it, guys. I hope I broke down everything and made it easy enough to understand. Once you take down the War Priest, collect your loot, and off to the maze you go. Now, I have a guide for the maze secret chest along with all 5 plates and the order in which you need to stand. So if you need help with anything else Kingsfall related, be sure to check out my Kingsfall playlist here on YouTube, as I hope to have everything that you will need. But that's it for me, Guardians. Thank you all so much for watching and for supporting my channel, slynation. It seemed like only yesterday I made a Kingsfall guide in Destiny 1 and was absolutely ecstatic when my video hit 100 views. I've grown a ton since Destiny 1, and it is all thanks to people like you. So thank you guys so much for stopping by, and be sure to subscribe for plenty more Destiny 2, Kingsfall, and Lightfall content. Spank the thumbs up or down if you liked, loved, or hated this video, and if you wish to get in touch, business or otherwise, feel free to hit me up anytime. SlyNationGaming67@gmail.com, or check me out over on the socials at Sly_Nation on Twitter, SlyNation Gaming on the good old Facebook. Take care, y'all, and you got this. Keep those eyes open for more D2 guides and videos coming out here soon, but until then, this is your dude Sly, and I'll see you all in the next one.